Bruchim Aboim, B'Shem Irgin Shir Torah, Moses Boston. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's shir, final shir of this season. Even though it's the final shir, the summer's not over. As you know, the dinner was supposed to be tonight, but we're being pushed off to a couple of weeks from now in Borough Park. Details will be sent via email. Send an email to irginshiratorah@yeshivanet.com for more information. It's a perfect opportunity to share Akaras HaTov to Irgin Shir Torah, for our Batzes Torah in the summer and throughout the year, Shavavim, etc. By putting an ad in the dinner journal that's being published in honor of the annual event. Call Irgin Shir Torah at 718-851-8651 or email irginshiratorah@yeshivanet.com for this great schos. I'd like to give a big yeshikach to Elam Shem for support for tonight's shir. Lili Nishmas Harav Lili Nishamois Harav Chaim Yitzchak ben Harav Israel Isha Maras Shlamis Naomi Bas Harav Gedalia Aryeh Harav Moshe ben Harav Shloima Maras Chava Bas Harav Aaron Yosef Aleim HaSholem. I'd also like to give a big yeshikach to the Shapiro family for the support for tonight's shir. Lili Nishmas Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac ben Moshe Aleim HaSholem, who's a Talmud of tonight's Maggid shir. Who have the cover tab with us are Benzion Gips, Magachi and Aga de Perka and Krasna. Tonight's shir on alternative new technologies and Hilchas Shabbos. The kitchen, new technology in the kitchen, ovens, the new ovens. My cover to corner by Gips for tonight's shir.
Yasher Koyach, and just a very quick forward. Like Rabbi Deutsch just mentioned, tonight was supposed to be a party or a dinner for this great irgun that we call Shiurei Torah, Kishmoi Kein Hu. That's what it is. It's just simply supplying the nutrients and the nourishments for our souls. So I was Zoicher Rabbi Sai a decade ago to deliver my first shir at its flagship shir in Borough Park at Stolen Besmedish. I haven't forgotten a quick forward that I've shared with the Olam over there. I would love to share it with you, although it's not part of the shir today. Chazal teach us in Mesechtes Bruches, La'olam yimna udam atzboi ma'asura d'shoinim b'beis hakneses. One should always count himself as the first 10 people in Besmedish. Shafilu mayubu achrov. Even if you can have 100 people that follow, kibbul schar keneged killing, he's going to get the rewards from all of them together. So if we learn the Shtikkel Gemara, it's actually brought down a Shulchan Aruch and Orechaim Simit Tzadik. So it seems to be that all the 10 people receive the same reward. Kibbul schar keneged kilam. They're all going to share the reward of the following people, whether 100 or 1,000 show up. But I want to share with you an incredible perspective from Rabbi Yosef Chaim of Baghdad, better known as the Ben Ish Chai. He authored a cipher commentary on Shas called the Ben Yehoyuda. The Ben Yehoyuda offers the following incredible perspective. We all know when a Yid creates a mitzvah, he goes davening, he learns each word of Gemara, each word of Torah, he creates a malach. So that malach comes up as Shemayim, and he advocates for this person, and he says, Tani schar leploini, give a reward for the person that recreated this and this mitzvah. So now let's envision 10 people come to shul, right? So Reuven walks in and he creates a malach, and the malach says, well, he davened with minyan today. Okay. Shimon comes in and he says, Shimon davened with minyan today. So the Bezdin Shal Malach asks from the malach of Shimon, who was the minyan? So actually you have to say, well, Reuven was there already, and then Shimon, so Reuven's name gets mentioned twice. And then when Levi comes up Hashemayim, he says, the Malach comes and advocates and says, Levi davened with a big minyan today. So who is the minyan? Well, Reuven was first, Shimon was second, and Levi, and so on. So the earlier you come, the more chances your name will be mentioned. So that's an incredible perspective in the Ben Yehoyuda. And he says, the earlier you come to a minyan, the more many times your name will be mentioned and given the merit that all those people that are going to follow you. So when it comes to an incredible organization called Shiurei Torah, that they get no supplements from government, they don't feed people, they don't heal people. There's many incredible organizations out there, but the organization of Irgin Shiurei Torah is simply just to to give and supply our souls with nourishment so that there's a chis of knowing Darkei Hashem. Can we envision, Rabbi say, I know myself of hundreds of people, but perhaps if you ask Rabbi Bald or Rabbi Deutsch, there's hundreds and thousands and millions of people that are kovaya, they're kovaya itim with irgin shi'urei Torah. Can we envision and imagine what it means when a person comes up Hashemayim, and whether it's the first question they'll ask him or the second question, machlokes and toisvis, but one of the very first question is kavata itim la Torah, and they're going to ask him where. They say, what do you mean? I came to the daily shir of Irgin Shi'urei Torah in Borough Park of Flatbush. Say, who is Irgin Shi'urei Torah? Well, there's Rabbi Bald, there's Rabbi Deutsch. Who funded the shir? Oh, all our sponsors and those that funded it and made it capable and a thing that should be able to operate. Can we envision the millions of schar that these people get? So that would be just a quick poischem b'chved achsanya to this great organization that I was zoiche the past decade. Tonight's topic, Rabbi Isai, I would like to discuss a very new type of cookware, which is called induction, just in order to gain an understanding what means induction ovens and what is applicable for Shabbos and especially for Yom Tov. So we're going to start through the entire sugya. We're not going to go in depth into a sugya because I know there are many that are watching on many platforms. I'm going to try to simply go through the thing, not so in depth, and as we get along, I'll simply say a lot of haluchas that are applicable in our days. Let me just begin with the Mishnah in Masechta Shabbos Daf Lamed Chesed Amud Beis. And the Mishnah discusses a phenomenon of placing a pot onto a direct contact with a fire or heating element, which is equivalent to a fire, by the way. The Rambam says that in Mechama Mesegechelis, if you heat up a coil, either it's the melucha of mavashal or the melucha of mavir, one of the av meluchas and machlokes the Rambam and the Ravid. Just for the information, when you want to know the technical part, if you look at any wiring chart, a wire gets red hot beginning at 930 Fahrenheit. And then, as it gets hotter, it gets lighter and lighter until 2200 Fahrenheit. A wire is like completely white. So at its darkest point, it's about 930 Fahrenheit. And for our shir today, I would not go in depth and explain where this is noigaya, where it's applicable when it comes, for example, to warmers and warmer drawers, that the heat inside the warmers do not go up higher and more than 250 degrees Fahrenheit. So there is an assumption that the heating element below it is also not going to go up more than 250. So maybe it's not a gecheles, so maybe it's not an issa do'iraisa. I will not go into the sigya today. This is not the topic of our shir today. I myself was zoiche to launch an incredible innovation, a video platform, where it's actually an app on both telephones. You can get it as an app or in a website. It's called hiddur.org, the beauty, HIDDUR.org. Hiddur Halacha, the beauty of Halacha. And over there we go through, we have, Baruch Hashem, after a following year, a very successful year, Baruch Hashem, gaining a lot of populance in this program. So we go through many subjects. Today I would like to focus on this inductive oven. So let us begin with the concept that the Mishnah is telling us that if you take a pot that's been cooked on a flame or a heating element, and you're going to place an egg next to the pot, and that egg is going to cook from the heat of the pot, the Chazal called this Toldus Hu'or, the child of fire. Whether the fire is a physical fire or a heating element, it's a Toldus Hu'or, it's a child of a fire. So Chazal say this is an Isser D'Oiraisa. Let us speak about the actual terminology beyond this so that we gain an understanding what induction means. Let me just show the oilam over here. This is what we call in English conduction. As you all can see over here on this list, conduction simply means, as you see the definition below it, the transfer of heat or electric current from one substance to another by direct contact. That's what we call conduction. When you place a pot directly on a flame or a heating element, we call that conduction. That's how the food inside the pot gets heated. And Chazal come and say not only is conduction an Issa D'Oiraisa, but if you were to place an egg at the side of a pot, and we're already the next extension, it's already it's a child of conduction, it's also going to be an Issa D'Oiraisa. But now Chazal come with a great chiddush, and Chazal say that if you were to take an egg, you crack a raw egg and you put it directly in the rays of the sun, then that would be mitter lechatchila. That would be permitted. Even you could go out in a hot summer day on Shabbos. You could take an egg, you want to cook it on Shabbos, you crack it, and you put it inside the sun, you put it in a plate, you put it out in the sun. And the rays of the sun cook the egg, that's permitted, that's mitter lechatchila. You can take a glass, assumingly your urn or your hot pot is not working on Shabbos and you want to have a coffee or a tea. So you can take a glass, make sure it's uncovered. We're going to speak in a moment if it is covered. An uncovered glass of cold water, you put it directly in the sunlight, the rays of the sun cooks it up, that's permitted lechatchila. Just for some technical part, I would like to share with you, we spoke about conduction, so here is what it's called when you cook something in the rays of the sun, it's called radiation. Energy that is radiated or transmitted through the form of rays or particles. We know that the world is full of rays and particles. The atmosphere, there is sound waves, there is all types of waves in the air. When you have the rays of the sun, the energy that's transferred from the sun directly to a food by radiation, that's what Chazal call bishul b'chama, cooking in the sun. Now, make no mistake, Chazal didn't say radiation is permitted. Chazal say the radiation that is created, that Hashem created by the rays of the sun, that is permitted, that's mitter lechatchila, one can do so halucha l'maaseh. But when you're going to have a substance that's been heated by the sun, and now, for example, let's say you're going to take an egg and you're going to crack it on the hood of a car that's been heated by a sun. It's very hot. Now, the hood of the car is going to be cooking the egg. That is something that is called toldes chama, the child of the radiation of the sun. And that already, according to the Rabbunan, is a Isser de Rabbunan. It's a machlokes between Rabbunan and Rabbi Yossi. We paske like the Rabbunan, it's going to be an Isser de Rabbunan. So that's the yisoid of the shitta of the Rabbunan. In the direct rays of the sun, bishul b'chama, the radiation rays of the sun that's going to cook your egg or your water is permitted. But if you're going to cook it by a substance that's been heated in the sun, that's called toldes chama, the child of radiation, and that's already usir and isir de Rabbunan. We might permit it for a choila, even if it's not a person that's not in danger, immediate danger. Choila sha'ayin boi sakuna, a person that needs his coffee or something, and you can only heat it by something that's a toldes chama. Perhaps we could be at mata because it's only an isir de Rabbunan, but it's not going to be permitted lechatchila. Let me just mention a very important shit in the Gemara. It is known as Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel argues, and he says, although one could not cook in the tolda of a chama, in the child, like we mentioned, a substance that's been heated by the sun, but if it's obvious, if it's nikah lachoil, if you're going to take an egg and cook it on a hot rooftop, you're going to go up to a rooftop and in the hot summery days, I think tomorrow is supposed to be a very hot day, you go and you touch a tar on the roof, it's going to burn you, it's very hot. So on a rooftop, even though it's toldes chama, it's a substance that's been heated by the sun, but it's obvious, it's very obvious to all that this is a toldes chama. So according to the Shimon ben Gamliel, that would be permitted. The Mugan Avruam, one of our greatest poskim in Hilchos Shabbos and Mashiach Yitches, quotes the Yam Shel Shlomo, which was authored by the Shlomo Ludia the Marshal, and he wants to rely on the Shimon ben Gamliel halucha l'maaseh. Again, we're not going to use it, certainly say a mitter lechatchila, but we'll use it when we need to use this heta. We'll use it as a backup. This heta of Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, when you're going to cook with something that's obvious, it's obvious that it's bishul b'chama, although it might be toldes chama, then we can always use this as a backup, not as an initial heta, but as a backup, the shita of Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. Let us for a moment take an idea that's perhaps here in New York not so popular yet. There is something out there called solar ovens. Now, if you're going to ask somebody that's not familiar, b'chlal, with the concept of what is a solar oven, so he says, well, solar, that's something that's emitted from the sun, that's the rays of the sun. So the Gemara says that you're allowed to bake in the sun. So I want to go away for this upcoming Shabbos, and I need to take along a cooking substance. I don't want to take a plata. I'll take a solar oven, and I'll put it in on Shabbos. What's the problem? It's a solar oven. So let me tell you, Rabbi Isai, to my knowledge, I'm going to share with you what a solar oven today, how it works. How it's going to work tomorrow, I can't tell you, because technology changes not by the day, by the second. But this is a basic idea of how a solar oven works. Basically, it's a box that you put a regular pot inside, and it's got mirrors to attract the rays of the sun so that it gets heated by the sun. This is a basic idea of what a solar oven means. It's a basic idea. Whoever wants to see the diagrams more, like I mentioned, we put it up on our website. This year is not up yet on hider.org. But nonetheless, it attracts the rays of the sun. There's mirrors and glass that attracts the rays of the sun, and that's how the pot gets heated, not directly by the rays of the sun, but by the mirrors that's reflecting off the rays of the sun. So the Boisai, now, we all can ask anybody, you don't have to be a big poisik, but what does the Olam say? What type of a bishul is this in a solar oven? It's bishul b'chama? No, it's bishul b'toldes chama, because it's basically being cooked in the mirrors and the glass that's attracting the rays of the sun. Let me give you a small example of what the Ktsois HaShulchan speaks about. Assumingly that you have a little glass, right, that's closed. It's not open on the top. You have a closed glass of water. May you put that closed glass inside the sun and cook the water or not? We have a big machlekes apaskim. Many paskim view this as a toldes chama, because not the radiation of the sun is cooking the water. It's the glass that's being attracted by the sun that's cooking the water. Aniyas dati, and I think it's kind of obvious if you haven't seen the diagram up close. If you see it up close, to even see how it works. So whoever wants to, you see over here the lines. The lines get attracted by the glass, and the glass is the thing that cooks the pot. So that's a solar oven. A solar oven will not be able to be used on Shabbos. I'll say issa de Rabbona, not a issa de Oiraisa. Now, if somebody's going to come and tell me that there's a type of oven today that works with solar power, in other words, you have a panel on your rooftop that generates energy, and that's what's going to generate your oven. So I don't think such a thing exists yet, but if it does, we're still going to discuss it, because if it doesn't exist today, it might exist tomorrow. We will not discuss the concept of solar boilers, which is very popular in Eretz Yisrael. It's very popular. It's getting a lot of popularity in New Jersey, and now the oilam is starting to move to Florida, so that's also very popular. I have a whole shir designated just for the solar boilers. Every one of the poskim that speak about solar-powered boilers on Shabbos and on Yom Tov have a different perspective, and it's not a kasha. Each one saw a different diagram. But today, with the information that we have, we bring them all together. There are a lot of companies that build it differently. Some of them are bishul b'chama mamish, and some of them are bishul b'taldes chama. It's not a stira. When the Meches Yitzchak is speaking about one form, and the Tzitz Eliezer is speaking about a different type, they're simply different type. We're not going to cover that in today's shir, because we're not going to get to that today. So, Nachsel in the bottom line, Rabbi Isai, we mentioned that bishul b'cham, if you take the egg and put it directly in the rays of the sun, which is the radiation of the rays of the sun, that's permitted, that's mitel lechatchila. If you're going to take a glass of water, and it's going to be exposed, it's going to be open to the elements, to the sun, the rays of the sun, that's also mitel lechatchila. You're going to close the glass, which is similar to what we call today a solar cooker or a solar oven. That's going to be a toldes cham, and it's not going to be permitted. And again, we're going to get back to the concept, if such a thing exists, that we have an oven that works with solar power. But I don't think it's so shy, so we're not going to focus on that. But now, Rabbi Isai, I would like to mention to you something that's very popular, especially during the winter. The Gemara says that there is a concept called Chamai Tveria, the hot springs of the city of Tveria. And the Rambam in Pereshah Mishnai says it's just an example, because Tveria is known to have the Chamai Tveria. But we have them all over in the world, a geyser or a hot spring, whether in Yellowstone National Park. How does that work? What is the concept? Let's first take a far-fetched example, then we'll put it applicable to Halacha L'Maaseh. What happens if a person were to take a pot and place it into a geyser or a hot spring? What type of bishul do we view that? So Chazal say, according to Rabbi Yossi, that's bishul b'toldes u'or. We view that as the child of fire. And Rabbi Yossi explains himself. How does this hot spring get heated? What heats this hot spring? So Rabbi Yossi, the Chalfa Pischa de Gehenim. It goes through the opening of Gehenim, and Gehenim is fire, and therefore we'll view this as a toldis u'or, a child of fire, which is a isid oirais. The Rabbanan argue on this phenomenon, and the Rabbanan say no. When one were to place a pot in any hot springs, it's not going to be an isid oiraisa, it's going to be an isid Rabbanan, because we view this as a toldis chama. We view this as if it has been heated by the rays of the sun. Let us gain an understanding of the shitta of the Rabbanon, and that's how we'll be able to say something that's very shchiach. We have hot packs, we have things that we open up and we put into our gloves, into our shoes, a chemical reaction which is called in the terminology of English, I should have printed it out, I just did it the last moment, an exothermic reaction when you mix chemicals together and it causes it to get it heated. So the Rambam actually says, how does actually a hot springs work? So the Rambam, because the water of the hot springs runs through gofris, which is sulfur, vidoimayim, and similar to that, magnesium chloride. It's a chemical reaction that turns it hot. And the Rabbanan say that we view this as a toldas chama. Why? Why is this a toldas chama? Why do we say that a chemical, exothermic reaction is viewed as a toldas chama? So let us first quote one of the Gedolah Poskim that we're not going to take on Halucha L'Masa. This is a Shala in Shalos Achivas Haluchas Ketanis. Rabbi Yankel Chagiz, which is quoted many times in the Beit Haitiv, those that learn Mishnah Brita, a very known posik from 400 years ago. Rabbi Yankel Chagiz was questioned, but in a very interesting question that had nothing with halacha, but he applied it in halacha. Somebody asked him that he went out to Iceland, I don't know where, and he saw something what we call a volcano. He says, how does a volcano work? Why is it starting to spew the lava and everything? Where does it come from? Under, we know, beneath the surface, there's all types of chemicals, like we mentioned before, sulfurs and magnesium and chloride. Somewhere in the atmosphere, in the universe, somewhere the ray of the sun it gets attracted by the rays of the sun, it ignites by the ray of the sun, and it's burning beneath the surface. It just doesn't have where to come out. It's just a volcano, it's just a place where it's open, and that's where it just comes out from beneath the surface, but it's bubbling and it's burning from what? From directly the ray of the sun. So the haluchas ketanas. When the Rabbanan argue and Rabbi Yossi and they say that hot springs, chamai tveria, the hot springs of Tveria, or any type of hot springs, is not a toldas u'or, it's a toldas chama, Rabbi Yossi says, what do you mean? Doesn't the Gehenim heat the hot springs? Say the Rabbanan, yes. But what's heating this Gehenim? Gehenim gets heated by something, by a ray of the sun that ignited one of these chemicals. In this fire will always be viewed as a toldas chama and not a toldas u'or. In other words, a fire that's been ignited by the rays of the sun will always be viewed as a toldas chama. If you were to take a magnifying glass and light a pilot light, whether in an oven or in a boiler, that pilot light is a toldas chama, not a toldas u'or. According to Haluchas Ketanis, if you have a pilot light oven and you lit the pilot by attracting the rays of the sun, that pilot light oven will always be a toldas chama. If you have chas v'shulam, you should never have a choila. But if you need to cook for a choila sha'ayin by sakuni, you would be able to cook on such an oven according to Haluchas Ketanis, a great chiddush in Haluchas Ketanis, Shalos Shivas Haluchas Ketanis. Obviously, Rabbi say, it's very difficult that we say that we paskin like the Haluchas Ketanis. Otherwise, why wouldn't we do so? So, what is the explanation? Why do Rabbanan view a hot springs as a toldas chama? So, there's a cipher called Kiryas Cipher, which was authored by Rabbi Yosef Mitrani, the Ma'abit. He was actually the very first person that was miyaset, that made the city of Tzvas as a Haimish city, where people could live. He was the first one to open a besmedish and a mikvah and everything. As he writes in a different way, we're manich by Agba the Pirka by a different shir. This is an incredible chiv in a Mabit. Mabit offers a different explanation, which is Halucha L'Masa. Mabit says The term Taldes Chama is lav dafka. It doesn't have to be a fire that's been ignited by the rays of the sun. Any type of fire that goes out of the conventional fire that was in the Mishkan, the way they created a fire was by flintstones or by a way of getting the actual fire that we have today. Any fire, any warmth, any energy that's not the conventional energy that we had in the Mishkan, we call it with the name Taldes Chama. Hence, now we understand that Chazal, the Chachomim say, Chamai Tverya, which is not your typical fire or heating element as we began our shir, according to the Rambam, that is fire itself. But any chemical reaction, exothermic reaction, will be a Taldes Chama not because it's coming from the sun, but simply that's the name that Chazal put on any type of energy other than the classical conventional fire. If that would be correct, Rabbi Isai, we have a very stark kasha. We have a very stark kasha on this concept. The Gemara says there's a type of chemical that we find many times in Shas. It's called in Hebrew and Lishon Kodesh Sid, Samech Yid Dalet. In English it's called lime. In Hungarian it's called gips. Excuse me for the pun. But it's something that is called lime. What is lime? Lime is a type of chemical that if you pour water into it, it'll start heating up. The chemical name for it is calcium oxide or CaO. You can research it. They use it in construction, they use it as a whole compound. But one of the components of the compound is something called lime. That is quick lime, has a few names, CaO. So Chazal say, if you were to take lime, you pour water into it, and you cook something in that, that's Taldes U'ad. Everybody agrees to this, even the Chachomim. According to how we explained the Mabit, how do we say, why is Chamai Tverya Taldes Chama, and Bishul Besid, cooking in lime, is considered a Taldes U'ad? What is the difference? Fortunately, we have one of the major Rishonim that was discovered, mamash, in the last 150 years, the Me'idi. The Me'idi hasn't been seen by the Gdoila Poskim. The Me'idi in Masechta Shabbos Daf Lamed Tes comes with an incredible chiddush. The Me'idi says the nature of lime is that it contains heat that's been put into it years ago. In other words, says the Me'idi, that if you were to ever heat lime with fire, or with a heating element, even though now you made a chemical compound out of it and now it's cool to touch, when you pour water into it, you're going to awaken the previous heat that's been stored somewhere in the molecules of the chemical. That's the Me'idi. And therefore we view this as Taldes U'ad. Where is this negaya for us? We have a product called hot cans. Anybody over here served in the military? I don't know, but every MRE is a hot can. You open the can and it causes an exothermic reaction. A person that wants to open a hot can on Shabbos to heat the food, if one of the components of the chemical says something to calcium oxide or CaO or quicklime or anything to do with lime, then opening such a can and cooking the food is bishul ba'ar, and that would be an isid d'oiraisa. If we don't have one of the chemicals known as CaO or lime, you just make a regular chemical reaction without this component, without this product, then perhaps we could view this as a Taldes Chama, not a Taldes U'ad. And furthermore, if we have a great soirach, then we can use also the shita that we mentioned before, the Shimon ben Gamliel, the Mugan Avruam, the Yam Shel Shloimeh. It's very obvious when you open a hot can. When you open a hot can, it's very obvious that this is not plugged into an electrical element. It's not plugged into a fire. It's very clear that this is Bishul B'chama. So in the case where it would be a tzorich for a choila or something that's in a great necessity, that we would be able to, al the din of Bishul, we would indeed be able to open a hot can on Shabbos. And the same applies to a hot pack. Many people like to bust the liquid in a hot pack, they put it on their back, or they like the therapy of it, especially during the winter. If the hot pack has any of the components, you look into it, it says CaO or calcium oxide or lime, then busting that thing on Shabbos could be a serious shala of a de'orais bishul be'or. Because Chazal say Sid is or. If it doesn't have, then we could run into a shala of lisha, which is not a discussion for today. If the chemicals become one component, like a jello or something, then that could be a serious issue of lisha. But let's say it stays watery and it's not a lisha, then there's one more problem we'll address, which is also very applicable in our generation. There is something called a soda stream. I'm sure many of you are familiar what the soda stream is, especially if you ever visit Eretz Yisrael. Soda stream is becoming now very popular here in the United States as well. Soda stream is something, a staple that every Yiddish house has in Eretz Yisrael. Instead of buying soda, you get that bottle. It goes onto a balloon, what they call it. There's a gas. There's not CaO, the CO2 inside. There's a certain gas inside. You put the water onto the balloon and it shoots bubbles and it creates seltzer on Shabbos. It's not electronic. It doesn't work nothing with electronic. It's just the release of a button. There's a gas and you put it down on a button and it shoots the thing into it. So there's one of the great svurim that we had in before the Shmira Shabbos Ke'ilchusa came out. Today, Shmira Shabbos Ke'ilchusa, he's the Paisik in Ilchus Shabbos. Before the Shmira Shabbos Ke'ilchusa was a sefer called the Shvisas HaShabbos. It's unfortunate that Klal Yisrael forgot of this sefer, but this was the Shmira Shabbos Ke'ilchusa prior to the Shvisas HaShabbos. And he brings down B'Shem Rebbe Shia Leib Diskin Zatzal that one could not create a soda stream on Shabbos because of the melucha of Makkah B'Patish, creating something that hasn't been before. So one may ask, what do you mean? Every time you make a coffee, you're also taking water, that's regular water, and you're creating a coffee. Why isn't it Makkah B'Patish? Zukrab Shia Leib Diskin, coffee and sugar has the nature that it doesn't actually, when you see it dissolving, it only dissolves. It doesn't actually become part of the water. As we all know, if you were to take a coffee, or, it's a coffee? No, I'm just kidding. Thank you, Shkoyach. No, I didn't have what to put it here.
On the stand, so stand.
Oh, okay, it's okay. Shkoyach. I appreciate it. If you were to take, it's been in the soda stream, he's saying. If you take a coffee and you let it stand, and you let the water boil out, evaporate, you know that the coffee and the sugar will remain at the bottom, because the nature is that it goes into the molecules of the water, but it doesn't actually become one. Therefore, we don't view it as Makkah B'Patish. However, when you put CO2, you put in the gas into the water, it actually becomes one. It becomes one chefza, and therefore it's Makkah B'Patish. If we were to take the Chiddush of Rabbi Shia Leib Diskin, the same would be applicable when we do an exothermic reaction. The same would be applicable, same idea, because it becomes a new Metzias. However, Rabbi Sai, Gedoyla Poskim argued on this Rabbi Shia Leib Diskin's Psak Din. The Shmira Shabbos Ke'ilchusa argues on it. Poik Chazi Ma'amad Debar, going to Yisrael. I've seen many Gedoylim do it on Shabbos, and that's just the Minig Oilam. We're not Choshesh Rabbi Shia Leib Diskin. So going back to our shala, busting a hot pack or a hot can, if it has lime or calcium oxide, the CaO, then it's for sure going to be an issa of tol desuar. If it doesn't have that, then it might be a problem of lisha. We have to take care of that. And if it doesn't have the problem of lisha, then we won't have a problem of Makkah B'Patish. Before we go on to the next part of our shir, I would just like to mention that there are two other types of heating things, of mixing chemicals. One is something called a disc. Perhaps one of you are familiar with it. I actually held it in my hand, and I actually took a picture of it, and I lost those pictures. So I don't remember who brought it for me. It's a type of thing that's like a jelly that has like a disc, metal inside. If you shake the disc, the jelly gets heated and it gets hardened. If you put it into a pot, it gets cooked up and it gets loosened again. I don't have any information how this works, so I'm not going to pass. I'm just saying there is a type of disc that I don't know how it gets heated and what the status of that heat is. There is another type that is not chemicals, a chemical reaction, an exothermic reaction, that what we mentioned before, that people you like to place inside their gloves or inside their boots. You open a package and it gets heated on its own. That doesn't work with water. That works with ion. The nature of a type of thing called ion, when it gets mixed with the atmosphere, it gets rusted, and the rust heats the ion. Exactly what this is I don't know exactly how it works either. Anybody's welcome to contact me, call me, or contact me on my website and give me information. I'm always ready to hear. Okay, Rabbi Isai. Now let's move on. Now that we have an understanding what is Toldes Chama, now that we gain an understanding of what means Toldes Chama, we know that we say like the Kiri Yisaifa de Mabit, anything that's besides the conventional fire or heating element is going to be Toldes Chama besides for lime. Now let's move on to something that was very popular and still popular. 40 years ago they came out with something called the microwave. And that's why there was a great deal in the Paskim, whether he's talking about cooking on Shabbos, or when it comes to putting in milching in a fleischiger microwave, or the opposite. Let me explain what is the concept of a microwave and what was the difficulty. Ada Yom Hazeh, if you're going to have a shala on a microwave, on Bishul Busa B'chulav, I can give you names of, if you want to throw it in the garbage, I'll bring you Gedolah Paskim and tell you to throw out the microwave. And if you want to eat the food, I'll bring you Gedolah Paskim and I'll Paskim if you can even eat the food. Why is it so complex? If you ever cooked something in a microwave, you'll always notice that the only thing that gets hot is the food. But the microwave around and around doesn't get hot. So how does it work? What does a microwave do? So here's just a little bit in an illustration. Perhaps it's not so clear. Here's a little illustration of what a microwave is. In the little corner over here, this is a thing called a magnetron. A magnetron creates artificial radiation. Not the same radiation than the sun. It creates an electrical radiation here in the corner. There's a magnetron, as you can see. Okay, and then there's a waveguide that takes from the magnetron and guides the waves inside the food. Now, how does the food get heated? The nature of food is that it has leiches. It's solid, and it has the leich. It has the liquids inside. It has the moisture and the liquids inside. Every food has moisture and liquids. Now, there's a third type of cooking that we didn't discuss yet today. We spoke about conduction, we spoke about radiation, and now we want to mention something that's very popular for every balabust in the kitchen. It's called convection. What is convection? Here's a definition of what means convection. Convection, the transfer of heat through a fluid caused by molecular motion. What does this mean? This means basically, when you're going to have, every convection oven has a few fans that circulates the hot air. When you have a few fans in a few directions circulating hot air, what happens is the hot air moves the moisture inside the food. What happens when you move moisture at a quick pace? It gets heated. Similar to when somebody rubs his hands together, it gets the friction, creates a heat. That's what convection means. When you have hot air moving around in an oven, that means a convection oven. What is the purpose of it? The purpose is that it spreads the heat evenly. It spreads the heat evenly because you have a few fans. Many people have in their home, their regular oven is a convection oven. Many people have their microwave oven. You can either do convection or microwave or both. The term convection simply means that they placed a few fans inside and they circulate the air, and now the food is going to get heated by molecular motions. It's just moving around so fast that the moisture and the liquids inside the food gets excited and gets heated. That's convection. Similar is this, that's how basically a microwave works. It sends its microwaves into the food, and the moisture inside the food gets heated by convection. Of course, how are we creating this convection? Not by the fans moving around the heated air, but by the magnetron and the waveguide that's moving the waves inside the food, and that's how it gets heated. So now that we understand what is a microwave, so I would like to ask this Chusha V'Olam. Is a microwave bishul b'chama? Two reasons why not. Number one, it's not the chama. It's the concept of radiation. Yes, because it's actual a magnetron that's making radiation, artificial radiation, but it's not the radiation of the sun. It's a electric made radiation. And number two, the way the food gets heated is not by radiation. The food gets heated by convection. So it's not bishul b'chamu. But it's similar. It's a close idea to Bishul B'chama. It's a close idea to Bishul B'chama, but it works different. And therefore, because only the food gets heated and the whole pot or the oven around doesn't, that's why there's such a complex thing when it comes to Shabbos, Yom Tov, Busa B'chulav, Issa V'heter. The oven doesn't get hot. If it doesn't get hot, then it doesn't get boilai, it doesn't absorb the Issa. There's only one thing on the top, which they call a stir or a fan. It's just a nicer name for a fan, a stir, that has to actually exhaust the hot air and the moisture out of the pot. So that fan, in this case, it's on the top. It could be in the back. It depends if it's a built-in microwave with a chimney or if it's just a portable microwave. That fan does absorb moisture, and it does absorb the liquids of the food. So that fan could become treifa. Does the fan send the treifa back into the food? Is anybody's guess. What is the fan made of? What is the components of the fan? Is this metal? Could we kasher it? Is this plastic? Or is it something, a carbon, something made out of something? So that's the complexity of a microwave, and when we give a shir about Busa B'chulav, we'll speak about that concept. But now in Hilchas Shabbos, let us for a moment ask the question, why is Bishul B'chama, cooking directly in the radiation rays of the sun, why is it permitted? Why isn't it similar to the conventional Bishul B'Shabbos? We understand it's not the conventional, but it's similar to it. So why is it different? So the Eglatal, which is the Avnei Neiser authored a sefer called Eglatal, which is one of the greatest poskim on Hilchas Shabbos. And the Eglatal offers an explanation which is very difficult to understand. The Eglatal says, when we speak about the Malucha of Bishul, of cooking, we're always going to look at the end result. When a person cooks, why does he cook? Because he wants to soften the food or he wants to make it tastier. So, Zugdar Eglatal, you're never going to have a Bishul B'chama that's going to taste exactly like a regular Bishul. It's not going to happen. There's a reason why Hashem created the world that people cook with fire and not with the sun. It's just not going to taste the same. And therefore, Chazal say, this end result is not the Melucha of Bishul. This is the explanation of the Avnei Neiser, which is very difficult to understand. Why is it difficult to understand? I want to ask the Olam a question. What was the Melucha in the Mishkan? Bishul, right? According to most paskim, Bishul, cooking. What does Bishul mean? Cooking with water. What is very similar to the Melucha of Bishul? Oifa. What is oifa? Baking without water. I want you to go home and take a piece of meat or fish. I want you to show me one piece of fish or meat that tastes exactly the same if it's cooked or if it's baked. Or today we have to add on if it's Betty crockered, right? But it's just the Metzias Advurim is that it's not the same. And yet, there's not going to be one poisik that's going to say chas v'shum that oifa is not a melucha d'oraisa and it's still permitted like a tchila. Very, very difficult to say the Avnei Neiser to understand. To say that we look at the end result, and the end result is that the taste varies from its classical, conventional taste, that's very difficult to say halacha l'masa. So what is the mahalach? Why is Bishul B'chama different? Reb Moshe and Chivas Igis Moshe comes with an incredible explanation. It's very applicable to our entire share today. Reb Moshe says, even in the times of Chazal, nobody ever baked in the sun if he had any other means of cooking. Because baking in the sun is made for a bocher in yeshiva, in camp, when he has no other choice. He doesn't have anything else. He's hungry. That's what he's going to do. He says, not that it's a shini in the melacha, it's a total different thing. Nobody ever used this method of oifa, baking is just a different type of method. Some people prefer baked fish, and some people prefer cooked fish. Baking in the sun is a method that's only used in Plan B. It's never been used and will never be used. That's just the Metzias. So Moshe, if that's the case, whatever you want to call a microwave, call him Bishul B'chama. Let's say that it's Bishul B'chama directly. But a microwave is something that every single person uses on a regular day basis. We don't have the reason behind Bishul B'chama. And therefore, says Moshe, if you want to, today's microwaves, you set it that it should come on in 2 hours from now. So I have a very great idea, I have a bright idea. Let me set it Erev Shabbos that it should come on when I want to eat my soup, right? And when it comes on, I'll make sure to disable the light. When it comes on, I'll open up the microwave and I'll stick in the soup. I'll bake it on Shabbos itself. Bishul b'chama, mitel lechatchila. Says Reb Moshe, no, it's the Issa Doiraisa. Bishul Doiraisa. Why? Because we don't have the concept of Bishul b'chama. Bishul b'chama was always something that a person used when he had no other choice. The microwave, however you want to view it, the fact is that this is the conventional way of cooking or baking or microwaving, and therefore it's going to be klapa da'alucha of Shabbos. It'll be an issa doiraisa to place something in a microwave. Even if you don't turn on the microwave on Shabbos, of course you can't turn on the microwave because there's electrical current that you're causing and other things, that that's not that's self-understood. But even in a case where you set it before Shabbos and it's going from before Shabbos, there will be an issa doiraisa to place something in the microwave. Now, Rabbi said, with that said, now we finally could get to what we were, we actually gave you a whole bundle of halachas, and I hope I didn't confuse you too much. But if you did, then now is the best part of getting confused. Now, there is a type of cookware called inductive. Inductive cookware. It's becoming increasingly popular. If you're going to buy a new oven today's days, there's a 90% chance that it's going to come with inductive cookware. If you're living anywhere, not in New York, where you don't have gas, you have electrical ovens, such in Florida and so these things, almost everyone has inductive. People here simply are not informed because you have the old conventional ovens and you don't know what it means. And you don't know how. I was recently Yom Tov in somebody's house. He called me in to ask a shal about the oven. And I passed the inductive cookware and I say, oh, this is inductive. You know how to use it on Shabbos and Yom Tov? He says, no, it doesn't work. I said, it does work. You don't know how to work it. You just don't know what it means, how it works. The guy put it in for you, but you don't know how it works. What is inductive? Let me explain how my understanding inductive is and where it comes into Shabbos, especially on Yom Tov. We explained that the Rambam says that you don't need a conventional fire, it should be a bishul. If you take a heating element that gets hot as a gecheles, like we explained, beginning at 930 Fahrenheit, that's also considered a bishul ba'ar. That's the chiddush of the Rambam. An inductive oven works as follows. Here's a simple diagram, but I'll show it soon because let me first explain. Below the surface of the ceramic, every inductive today comes with a ceramic surface. The surface is ceramic. Below the surface of ceramic, there is a heating element that works with an alternating current. For those that are not familiar, there's something called direct current, DC in short, like a battery. The electrical current runs in one direction, and then there's something called AC, alternating current, that runs back and forth. Now, many people in your houses, you have a 120, a 2, I don't want to go, I'm not an electrician, we're not giving here an electrical shear. But this current that's below the surface of an inductive ceramic cooktop runs on such a high frequency, between 500 and 1,000 times more than all your other plugs and outlets that you have at home. It runs on such a high frequency, the alternating current, that it creates right above the ceramic thing a charged electric magnetic field. For those that are not familiar, including myself, I'm just going to say what it simply for Nagay for our shir. When whoever created electric, whoever it was, didn't create something yesh ayin. We cannot create. Sorry? Correct. That's what I wanted. No, you can't create something. Ein kol chudash tachas hashemish. Hashem created the world with electric charges in the atmosphere. There's protons and electrons. Whoever put it together, I'm not so sure which scientist, Nikola Tesla or whatever, Thomas Edison put it into the bulb. But he simply took it and put it into a grid so to be able to create power. Our atmosphere is filled with electric charges. So this alternating current below the surface of the ceramic creates such a high frequency electric magnetic field that when you put down the pot onto the surface, the heat, the pot will transfer the electric magnetic field into heat. Make no mistake, it's not making the coil red. If you have an inductive oven, you could turn it on, the coil gets red. That's not what makes the coil red. The coil creates an electric magnetic field above the ceramic surface, and as long as you're not going to put a pot on, the surface will be cold. You can touch it. It's going to be freezing cold. After you put the pot, and the pot created the heat, now it's dangerous to touch because the pot creates the heat. You have to have a conductive cookware to be able to transform the currents into a heat. If you put, for example, certain type of, it has to be iron, has to be a certain type of cookware, otherwise it will not work. It's simply as a practical level. What is the chachma? Why did they create this? We all know when you have a conventional fire, a flame, or a heating element, most of the heat that you need gets lost in the room. You need a minuscule of the heat of the fire to go into the pot. Most of it gets lost in the room. The whole room gets it. You leave a blech on Shabbos in the summer, the whole room is hot. The chachma of this, that it's very energy efficient. The only heat only goes directly into the pot. None of the heat gets lost in the room. That is why they created this inductive cookware. It has the concept of a microwave, but it works totally different. Only the food in the pot gets hot. Around it is cold. But it doesn't work like a microwave. It doesn't work with a magnetron and electric waves. It's not what it does. The pot takes the currents, which many refer to as eddy currents, that's what they call it, and it transfers the heat into things. So here's the diagram for what I'm talking about. Here you can see below the pot surface is something called the alternating current, right? And above that is a ceramic surface. Now, when you place this pot onto the ceramic surface, the pot will transfer the heat, the current into heat. So Rabbi say, when somebody takes such a pot and puts it on a Shabbos, what is this? Bishul b'chama, bishul ba'or, taldes chama, taldes suah. What is it? What are you doing? What are you doing on Shabbos? First, let's talk about Shabbos, and then we'll transfer into Yom Tov. So I saw in a Tshiva, and Shalos Tshiva's Mincha Shloime of Rab Shloime Zalman Auerbach Zatzal, which we all know was a great chakran and understood the Bria, the Chachma Sabriya. And he speaks about something totally off topic, and I wanted to make a tzishtal, and we'll koicha the tzibira and we see if I'm correct or not. He speaks about a type of element which used to be very popular. You plug it into the wall, you stick it into a tea, and it heats it up, a fork, right? Now, he speaks of a type of a fork that only works when it's placed in water. I have yet to see it. I didn't see such a thing. The one that usually we have, when you take it out of the water, it's still hot and it burns out, right? But he had such a concept. I don't know where he had it, but that's just the Shalchus Mecha Shloim Simi Yid Gimel in Da'ura. He's done the Shala when you put that into water. He told the Chazoin Ish, he wanted a Tana, that this is not Bishul Ba'or. It's not Toldes Or. It's not the child of fire. Why? Because this fire doesn't work only be'emtzuas shlishes, only together with the water. The water is creating the heat, not the heating element. In Oy Bazoi, Zukt Reb Shlomo Zalman, this would be a gewaldige oiftu for choyle she'en bei sekuna. Perhaps we should go in the hospitals, he says, and we should give it out in all the hospitals, that if a choyle needs to have a hot drink on Shabbos, they should use this. Because it's told as cham, it's not told as uar. And at Tzoyrech HaChoyle, we could permit it to heat such a thing on Shabbos. Says Reb Shlomo Zalman that he was done with the Chazoin Ish, and the Chazoin Ish says, no, it's not a told as uar, it's not the child of a fire, it's an ibir shel or, an extension of fire. That's what the Chazoin Ish views this. And he says, although I don't understand what he says, but the Chazoin Ish had even a greater understanding to the Chachmas Atachina than I have, and therefore, hinini mevatel dati mifnei datoi. I know that it's not completely alike, but it's very similar to this Machlokes Reb Shlomo Zalman the Chazoin Ish. Here you have a pot, that the pot is the one, a dova shlishi, a third party, that's transforming an energy into heat. It's not being heated by the alternating current element, heating element below it. Perhaps this would be the machlokes between Reb Shlomo Zalman and the Chazoin Ish. If somebody were to place such a thing on Shabbos, if it would be an Issa d'Oraisa or if it would be an Issa d'Rabunan. Nonetheless, Rabbi Isai, I was waiting for somebody to say this, but either way, according to how the Moshe explained the issur of using a microwave on Shabbos, that this is the conventional way of cooking, and therefore even if you say it's told as chama, it's still going to be an issur d'oraisa. This is the way of the future, Rabbi say. There's going to be, mark my words, there's going to be a speaker over here, I don't know when, maybe in a week, maybe in a year, maybe in 5 years, and say, remember before the induction times, there was a type of oven that worked with gas, but that's just the future. So this is a normal, conventional way of cooking, and therefore on Shabbos, it's going to be an issur d'oraisa. My question, which I would leave with the oilam today, is Yom Tov. How do we view this pot, this cookware on Yom Tov? Well, you know, Yom Tov, one may not be moiled aish. You cannot create a fire on Yom Tov. You can't take a fire, create with 2 flintstones. You can't make a fire, light a gas oven, or a heating element for that matter. The same thing. But if one were to take a pot on Yom Tov, an induction pot, and simply set it down and heat up the food, what is he doing? He's being moiled chaim. He's not being moiled aish. There's no fire. The fire exists already. The coil exists. Do we view this as moiled aish? What is the moiled chaim and an inductive oven on Yom Tov? Haduvat Tzurechien. I'll leave some homework for the oilam. And once again, if you would like to review, this particular shir has yet been posted, but you're more than welcome to join. Everything's for free, the apps and the website. You can see many of such type of shiurim. Hashem should help. We should be zoiche des chis ha-toira einu nishir ha-toira zois. Des chis of the great organization of Irgun She'ira Toira. We should be zoiche that the upcoming year should be a shnas ge'ila v'yeshir. All of those that need a refiah should have a refiah. All of those that need panus should have panus, and we should be zoiche to go against Mashiach in Yerushalayim Ira Kodesh b'mhayda v'yamani umayn.
Shem Irgun She'ira is posting like Rabbi Yashikach to Rabbi Gips for the very informative shir and Shabbos. Like Rabbi Yashikach to Elam Shem for the support for tonight's shir. Leilin Neshomes of Chaim Yitzchak ben Arav Zriel, Mashlam Nomi Bas of Gedalia Aryeh, Moshe ben Arav Shloimeh, Maraz Chava Bas of Aaron Yosef, Leah Masholem. Also like Rabbi Yashikach to the Shapiro family for the support for tonight's shir. Leilin Ishmael of Yitzchak Isaac ben Moshe. Olav Sholem. Voisai, even though the dinner was originally scheduled for tonight, it has not been canceled. It's still taking place. Bezos Hashem, Borough Park in a couple of weeks. Details to be announced via email. Send an email to irgunshiratayra@yeshivinet.com for more information, or to put an ad in the journal that'll be published in honor of the occasion to honor the Magidah Shir, Shiurim Rivin Jod, or to have a chelik in Abotzes Torah of Irgun Shiratayra worldwide throughout the year. To everyone for coming the whole summer, and to everyone who helped, to Yaakov Kimmel for his help every night, arranging the shir, and all the live stream, and the phone system. Rabbi Kimmel for when he helped. B'kach to Boston and Moisters for all the support and for hosting the shiurim. Aksiv Chsim Atayva Good Geben Shir B'Chananya Ben Akash Emer Rotzach Hadash Baruch Lezakes Es Yisrael Afig Hiblim Torah Mitzvah Shenema Adonai Chofes Aman Tzidka Yagdol Torah V'Yadeh.